Welcome to Marking the End Times. I'm Mark Hitchcock, and it's always a pleasure to welcome you here with us. And I've got an exciting program today, I believe. I want to talk about four major events or really startling developments in the Middle East this week, I think with major prophetic implications. And what I'm referring to, I'm sure many of you have heard this already at different news outlets, but it's related to this ongoing process of the normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Now, we just talked about this a few weeks ago, but this is a fast-moving story. There have been several really startling developments just in the last few days that I want to bring you up to date on. And so all of this is building on the Abraham Accords of 2020 that were brokered by President Trump. But everything keeps moving forward really with shocking speed. And so I've got four developments just in the last week, a couple of them in the last few days. That I want to share with you. Now, in a little bit, we'll go to our subscriber only section, and I'm going to answer some questions there that have been sent in. One question is about COVID and its relationship to pestilence in the end times. Another question about the 10 Commandments, about do not kill. And if that's true, then why does God often order people to kill people in the Old Testament? Is there some contradiction there? Another question, this is a great one, about at the rapture, will rods and screws and different things in our body be taken with us in the rapture, or will they be left behind as proof that we've been caught up to be with the Lord? And then a final question that relates to, will we see what's happening? Do people who are in heaven see what's happening down here on the earth? So we'll answer those questions a bit when we get to the subscriber only section. But what we've seen happen just here again in the last few days is some major movement in this normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Saudi Arabia right now is actively pursuing a U.S. brokered deal that would see bilateral relations formed between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Now, this is being called by experts a grand bargain. One person called it a tectonic shift in the Middle East. The Economist, a well-known periodical, has an article that says an Israeli-Saudi pact could upend the Middle East. The momentum in these negotiations really seems unstoppable. At this point, a treaty just seems inevitable. So as I've said, what I want to look at is four key historic events just this past week that point toward this peace pact between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And then I want to look at the significant prophetic implications of this. So I'll just take these in order. So let's just go back a few days to September 20th. There was a Fox News interview, many of you may have watched it, between Bret Baier and the Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And there were some really astounding statements that he made. I want to just read a quote again from that article that I referenced in the Economist. It says, Mohammed bin Salman does little to hide his relish at the prospect of a strategic pact between America, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. In a rare television interview on September 20th, Saudi Arabia's crown prince and the country's de facto ruler acknowledged with a smile that an agreement is in the cards. Here's what he said. Every day we get closer. It seems it's for the first time real and serious. A pact, he said, would be the biggest historical deal since the Cold War. Now, that's the de facto leader in Saudi Arabia. It was a fascinating interview. A lot of other things were said. But this peace agreement is being brokered by the United States. It all kind of began, the momentum began back in 2020 with the Abraham Accords. And what we see happening now is really an extension of those accords to include the most important nation today in the Middle East. But this pact could also have nuclear implications. Part of this agreement could be to allow Saudi Arabia to begin nuclear enrichment, could be part of this deal. Now, the condition would be that this nuclear enrichment's only for civil purposes. It's only for nuclear reactors and things like that. But of course, we know how that is. It can often expand into military use. So this then, if that takes place, would have major ramifications for the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Iran is already warning Saudi Arabia against entering into these normalization of relations with Israel. So their relationship now, that's not been good in the past, now is even more at odds. In that interview between Bret Baier and Mohammed bin Salman on Fox News about the prospect of Iran getting a bomb, or the Iranians getting their own nuclear weapon, the Crown Prince said this, We are concerned of any country getting a nuclear weapon. And he added that if Iran did successfully develop a weapon, we will have to get one. So Iran is a Shiite nation. They're Shiite Muslims. And Saudi Arabia is the leader of the Sunni Muslim world. What he's saying here, I think, in essence, is if there's a Shia bomb, then there's going to be a Sunni bomb as well. But the U.S., possibly as part of the negotiations of allowing Saudi Arabia to have their own nuclear enrichment. So this could be a part of that, which ups the game and could set up a nuclear arms race really in the Middle East. So that's what happened on September 20th. This interview with Mohammed bin Salman, Bret Baier, when he made a lot of statements about this normalization of relations with Israel. Well, fast forward then 2 days to September 22nd. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. And if you've listened to that, it's fascinating. It's laced with Old Testament biblical references. Let me just read a few things from some articles about the speech that he gave. He says, "There's no question the Abraham Accords heralded the dawn of a new age of peace. I believe we're on the cusp of a more dramatic breakthrough. A historic peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia, it would be a quantum leap." I like those words. We're on the cusp of a dramatic breakthrough. Peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia will truly create a new Middle East as the circle of peace expands. So he sees this as an expanding circle of peace. A real path towards a genuine peace with Palestinians can easily be achieved. He says such a peace will go a long way in ending Arab-Israeli conflict and will encourage other Arab states to normalize their relations with Israel, adding that it will also enhance prospects of peace with the Palestinians. The agreement, Netanyahu emphasized, will encourage a broader reconciliation between Judaism and Islam, between Jerusalem and Mecca, between the descendants of Isaac and the descendants of Ishmael. So he's taking this all the way back to the beginning. And then he concluded his remarks by saying this: "Bring forth the blessings of a new Middle East that will transform lands once written with conflict and chaos into fields of prosperity and peace." Well, that's exactly what the Bible predicts. There will be the state of Israel in the end times. They're going to enjoy, at least periodically and temporarily, a time when they're at peace and at rest and living securely. Now, fast forward 4 more days to September the 26th, 2 significant events. First of all, Israel's tourism minister, a man named Chaim Katz, traveled to Saudi Arabia. He marked what's described by Israel as the first time an official diplomat, a diplomat of Israel, visits Saudi Arabia, an Israeli cabinet member. And Katz will be attending a United Nations World Tourism event in Riyadh. So this is a historic breakthrough. You have Israel's tourism minister, a cabinet minister, taking a diplomatic visit to Saudi Arabia. The very same day, September 26th, while Israel's delegation, led by Chaim Katz, visits Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia has a newly appointed envoy to the Palestinians. So there's a new office in Saudi Arabia that's an envoy to the Palestinians. And the very same day, he made his first visit, this man did, to the West Bank, to the Palestinian area there, to present his credentials to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Now, this is key because the main sticking point really between Israel and Saudi Arabia is the entire Palestinian issue. So the same day that this diplomat from Israel, this cabinet member, is going to Saudi Arabia is sending their envoy to the Palestinians. They've got to work out some solution to that problem before they're able to broker this final peace. So we see these 4 key events here. The interview of Bret Baier with Mohammed bin Salman, where he makes all these positive statements about this agreement. The speech by Benjamin Netanyahu, where he says we're on the cusp of this historic treaty. Then you have the visit by the Israeli foreign diplomat going there for the very first time, a member of the cabinet. And then we have this Saudi Arabian envoy going to the Palestinians. So all these things happening within 1 week's time. So this kind of elusive phantom of a comprehensive Mideast peace deal, ever since Israel was founded in 1948, the modern nation, It now seems to be within reach. And the prophetic significance of this is monumental. This is a major step because the Bible predicts a broad Middle East peace deal during the end times that creates a greater security for Israel. Daniel 9:27 says, "He, that is the Antichrist, will confirm a covenant with the many in Israel for 7 years." Now, like what Charles Dyer says, he says, what is this covenant the Antichrist will make with Israel? Daniel does not specify its content, but he does indicate it will extend for 7 years. During the first half of this time, Israel feels at peace and secure, so the covenant must provide some guarantee for Israel's national security. Very likely, the covenant will allow Israel to be at peace with her Arab neighbors. One result of the covenant is that Israel be allowed to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Now, that's another whole issue that we'll have to get into more in depth at another time. But Ezekiel 38 says when Russia and Iran and their Islamic allies invade Israel in the end times, they're at rest and living securely. So there's going to have to be some counterfeit temporary peace for Israel in the future. And remember that this peace treaty is what begins the 7-year tribulation period. It's not the rapture. The rapture will end the church age, and then sometime after that, the Antichrist will come on the scene and forge this peace deal with Israel. That's what will begin that final 7-year period we know as the tribulation. Now, another point of significance of this treaty is being brokered by an outside party. It's being brokered by the United States, and the U.S. brokered the Abraham Accords as well under President Trump. So you have a precedent now for these kinds of deals being brokered by a third party, and that's exactly what's going to happen when the Antichrist comes on the scene. He's going to be the third party in there who's going to bring the two sides together. It's interesting in Daniel 9:27, it says, "He, the Antichrist, will confirm a covenant with the many." Now that word confirm there can also mean to strengthen. So it could be that there's a covenant already in place, but he comes and strengthens or enforces it. That word can also mean to compel or strongly establish. So he may come and compel the parties to the table. He may strongly establish, just kind of force them to peace, or he may just strengthen or enforce a treaty that's already in place. We see the beginnings of that now. Also, the normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia will put Saudi Arabia at massive odds with Iran. They're already leveling all kinds of accusations and warnings. And that's what we see in Ezekiel 38. You have Sheba and Dedan, which is the Arabian Peninsula, on the opposite side of Iran in that war of Gog and Magog. So a Middle East peace is coming according to God's word. It's going to be temporary. It's going to be a counterfeit peace, but it's coming. And this comprehensive peace plan prophesied in Scripture is going to be finalized after the rapture. So think about this. If we can already see the initial dialogue and diplomacy now, if we already see the broad framework taking form, then how close must the rapture be? So to me, this is just another flashing red light on the dashboard of the ages, signaling that the rapture is near. And so we need to remember and heed the words of Jesus in Luke 12:35. These are great words to live by. "Be dressed, ready for service. Keep your lamps burning, like servants waiting for their master to return." May we be ready when he returns. We're going to go now to our subscriber-only section and answer these questions. And if you're not a subscriber, you can go to endtimes.com and you can sign up there for $7 a month and have access to all kinds of great information. And we're going to answer these questions about COVID and pestilence in the end time, about the commandment that says do not kill, about, will people with rods and screws and prosthetic devices in their bodies, will those go at the rapture? Will they be left behind? And then what do people in heaven see of what's happening down here on earth? So some great questions, and we'll go now to those questions and answer them.